Even though we have free will, does God know what we will decide? And if so, what is the reason for us being here?
Okay, very good question. If we have free will, does God know what we're going to decide? And if so, what's the purpose for our being here? Okay. Now, again, I want to preface this by saying there are differences of opinion on this. My views are not the only view, and there's room for disagreement on this, of course. I'll just give you my perspective. I mean, most Christians throughout history, not all, but most, have believed that, yes, we have free will, but God still knows what we're going to choose, an eternity ahead of time before we choose it. And there's no conflict there. Although a good percentage of the Christians have believed that God knows what we're going to choose because he predestines it, and yet in such a way that we're responsible for it, and that I could never make any sense out of. And some say that God is timeless, he's above time, so it's not so much that he foresees what we're going to do, he just sees it from an eternal present. And we could talk endlessly about that. But I'll just give you my 2 cents here for what it's worth. It works for me, it may not work for you. But as I see it, God knows everything. I have every biblical and philosophical reason for believing that God is omniscient. He's all-knowing. Now, if he's all-knowing, he knows all of reality. And he knows all of reality perfectly. And he knows all of reality exactly as it is. Okay, so lock that in. That's my view. The question is, what is contained in all of reality? And I believe that if we have free will, then part of the furniture of reality that God perfectly knows are possibilities. If I have free will, I can choose this way or I can choose that way, and that's what God knows. I can choose this way and I can choose that way. And so what I'm going to choose isn't a fact that's out there to be known. So it doesn't take away from God's omniscience that he doesn't know it, any more than it takes away from God's omniscience that he doesn't know that there's a unicorn in the middle of the stage right now. You wouldn't say, oh, God doesn't know everything. He doesn't know there's a unicorn in the middle of the stage right now. Well, that's because there's not a unicorn in the middle of the stage right now. So you wouldn't expect God to know that there is a unicorn when there's not. So also, if we have free will, in my view, we have the possibility of doing this or doing this, which means the fact of what we're going to do isn't there yet. We create that fact by what we decide. Once we create it, God knows it. Now, at the same time, a lot of our decisions, the longer you live, the more your character is formed, the more predictable you become. And so you still have choices, but your probabilities get inclined in one direction. And there comes a time when your character is so formed that you can't choose otherwise. You could have chosen otherwise, so you're still responsible for what you're choosing. But in the moment, at that point, you've used up your free will, as it were. We're always in the process of becoming. So whenever that is the case, God, of course, knows that because God knows all of reality perfectly. What impresses me, and I can't go into this all right now, a book I wrote on it is called God of the Possible, where I fleshed this whole thing out biblically. But I was always impressed by the fact, not always, but when I first started to discover it in the 80s, that God changes his mind a number of times. God is disappointed. He sometimes seems almost surprised by things. He's frustrated a lot of the time. He tries to do things that aren't successful. He tries to find someone to intervene on behalf of Israel in Ezekiel 22, but he can't find anyone. How can you try to find something that if you eternally know it's not there? He says, I sought for someone to stand in the gap, to repair the wall, and to keep this judgment from happening, but I couldn't find anybody. How do you genuinely look for something that you know is not there? He speaks about the future in the Bible quite a bit in terms of what might or might not happen. Now, they may believe, they may not believe. And so that tells me that God created a world where the future is to some degree, not all open, but to some degree consists of possibilities. And that's the domain of our freedom. Now, that becomes important for the second part of this question, because if all the facts of world history are eternally settled, from all eternity, what you will choose has been settled. Even before you were created, the facts are out there. Then you can't choose otherwise. If it's a settled fact that I will, in 2012, decide to buy a red car and then crash it into a wall, if that's a settled fact from all eternity, well then obviously I'm not free to choose the red car or not. I will choose the red car. It's a settled fact. And so it seems to me that would go against, at that point, life can begin to seem like you're just playing out a script. The script was eternally there. It's a form of fatalism, it seems to me. And that can begin to feel like a pro forma thing, which is why this person's saying, why do we even exist? Why not just skip this thing called history, and since the facts are already settled, let's jump to the end. We're not really doing anything new in the process of living out history. We're just kind of unfolding the facts that are eternally settled. Now, that's just one way of looking at it. The other thing I couldn't understand is this. Why would God create people that he knows ahead of time are going to go to hell? Why bother? Why not just, you foresee it, say, okay, forget it. Just keep the good and get rid of the bad. Why go through this is even more mysterious, and I'll end with this. Why would God create people that he knows are going to go to hell, and then he spends their whole life trying to get them to go to heaven? And he's frustrated by it. All day long, he says in Romans 10, I've stretched out my hands to these stubborn people, but they would not come unto me. Well, it's like, well, if you knew that they wouldn't come to you from all eternity, then why were you wasting your time? There's philosophical reasons, and for biblical reasons, I think the future partly consists of possibilities that are open. But many people disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. I don't see that's an issue that we should get too hot and bothered by.